Homeless teenager saved Hell's Angel's daughter from blazing barn. Then his life changed. The world screamed in patterns. Fire spreads at 3.2 feet per second in dry hay. Structural beams fail at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and a child's cry measures approximately 110 decibels. Elliot knew these things the way other people knew how to smile. The machinery shed behind Patterson's feed supply had been Elliot's home for 9 months, ever since his grandmother died. The metal building with its precise angles and predictable shadows felt safer than any house ever had. Every evening at 7:43 p.m. he walked the same route through the industrial district, counting steps, observing how buildings held themselves against gravity. That evening the numbers changed. Elliot was completing step 847 of his route when he saw orange light bleeding through the gaps in the Hartley barn's walls. His mind immediately began calculating. Wood barn, approximately 60 years old, dry timber, hay storage and loft. The fire had already consumed the northwest corner where the light was brightest. He stopped walking. His routine demanded he continue to step 205, then turn left at the chain-link fence. Fire wasn't part of the pattern. Then he heard it, a sound that cut through every calculation in his head, a child crying. Not the distant wail of a siren or the general noise of distress, but a specific terrified sobbing coming from inside the barn. Elliot's notebook fell from his hands. His brain shifted from routine mode to the thing that made him different, the thing his grandmother had called his beautiful calculator mind. Load-bearing beam at north wall will fail in approximately 4.3 minutes based on fire progression. South entrance structurally sound for approximately 6.1 minutes. Temperature inside approximately 600 degrees at ground level, rising. The decision happened in numbers. Risk of death to self, 23% if immediate action taken. Risk of death to child, 100% if no action taken. The equation was simple. Elliot walked toward the barn. The heat hit him like a physical wall. His skin prickled with input his brain struggled to filter. Too hot, too bright, too loud. The fire made sounds he'd never cataloged. Crackling, roaring, the groan of wood surrendering to physics. Every sensory receptor in his body screamed for him to retreat. He covered his mouth with his sleeve and stepped inside. The smoke was worse than the heat. It filled his lungs, stung his eyes, made the world gray and incomprehensible. But underneath the chaos, he could still hear her. The child, crying somewhere to his left, maybe 15 feet based on acoustic properties. "Hello?" The voice was small and hoarse. "I can't find the door." Elliot's vocal cords felt thick. Speaking to strangers always required preparation, and he had none. But the numbers in his head were screaming now. 3 minutes until collapse. Maybe less. "Stay where you are," he managed. His voice sounded flat even to himself, lacking the emotional inflection people expected in emergencies. "I'm calculating the safest path." He moved through the smoke systematically, using the wall as a guide. His hands touched wood, metal, hay bales, each texture cataloged and dismissed. The fire had created an updraft that pulled smoke toward the ceiling, which meant the lowest point was the safest path. He dropped to his knees. There, through the gray, he saw her, a small figure huddled against the eastern wall, maybe 6 years old, her face streaked with soot. She'd knocked over a lantern trying to find her way out in the growing darkness. The door had blown shut behind her, the old latch catching. "The beam above you will fail in approximately 2 minutes, Elliot said, crawling toward her. "We need to move now." The girl stared at him with wide eyes. "Are you a firefighter?" "No. Stand up. Follow exactly where I go." He reached her and took her hand. Physical contact he normally avoided, but the numbers didn't care about his comfort. Her palm was sweaty and small. He began calculating the optimal path back. Avoid the northwest corner where flames had fully engaged the structure. Stay low where oxygen was richest. Move toward the south entrance where the door frame hadn't yet been compromised. They crawled together through the smoke. Elliot counted seconds in his head, adjusting his mental model of the fire's progression with each passing moment. The girl coughed beside him, and he felt her grip tighten on his hand. 43 seconds. That's what they had when they cleared the barn door. Elliot heard the crack behind them, the sound of wood giving up its structural integrity. The main crossbeam collapsed into the space where they'd been standing, sending a shower of sparks into the night sky. The girl was coughing, gasping for clean air. Then she was crying, not the trapped, terrified crying from before, but the loud, grateful sobbing of someone who'd been saved. Her arms wrapped around Elliot's legs, her voice high and shrill with relief. "Thank you, thank you. You saved me." The sound was too much. The crying, the shouting, the crackling fire, the approaching sirens, all of it crashed into Elliot's nervous system at once. His hands came up to cover his ears. His body began rocking, a self-soothing motion he couldn't suppress. People were running toward them now. An older man, the barn's owner, shouting the girl's name. "Adelaide, oh God, Adelaide!" A woman in paramedic uniform appeared, trying to check Elliot's breathing. "Son, are you hurt? Can you tell me your name?" But Elliot couldn't speak. His throat had closed around words. The world was too loud, too bright, too much. He could see their mouths moving, see hands reaching for him, but his brain had shut down all non-essential processing to protect itself from sensory overload. He stood up abruptly, pulling away from the paramedic's touch. The girl, Adelaide, was being scooped up by the older man, who was checking her for injuries while tears streamed down his face. Everyone was focused on her, which gave Elliot the opening he needed. He walked away. No one tried to stop the teenage boy in smoke-stained clothes who was rocking slightly as he moved. They probably assumed he was in shock, which wasn't entirely wrong. He retrieved his fallen notebook from the sidewalk, brushed off the dirt, and continued his route. Step 848, step 849, step 850. The numbers brought his breathing back under control. By the time he reached the machinery shed at 8:47 p.m., exactly 64 minutes behind schedule, the rocking had stopped. Elliot pulled out his notebook and added a new entry. Fire at Hartley Barn. Structural failure occurred at 4.1 minutes, not 4.3. Recalculate degradation rates for 60-year-old timber under sustained heat exposure. The rescue itself didn't need recording. He'd simply solved an equation. 3 days passed. Elliot maintained his routine with rigid precision, as if the barn fire had been a minor anomaly rather than a life-threatening event. He woke at 6:15 a.m. in the machinery shed, ate the same breakfast he always did, peanut butter on bread, eaten in precisely 6 bites, and walked to the public library when it opened at 9 a.m. The library was his sanctuary. The building's architecture was sound, reinforced concrete with proper load distribution. The same librarian worked the morning shift, following predictable patterns. The air was always 68 degrees. Elliot spent his days there reading engineering textbooks and adding detailed building sketches to his notebook. On the 4th day, the numbers changed again. Elliot heard them before he saw them. The distinctive rumble of multiple motorcycle engines growing louder as they approached. He was 2 blocks from the machinery shed, exactly on schedule for his evening walk. The sound made his shoulders tense. Motorcycles weren't necessarily dangerous, but they were unpredictable. They moved faster than pedestrians, didn't follow the same traffic patterns as cars, and the riders often wore aggressive-looking clothing. Elliot preferred to avoid them, but these motorcycles weren't passing by. They were slowing down, turning, heading directly toward the industrial district where he lived. The rumble grew louder until it filled the air completely. Not 1 or 2 bikes, but many. Maybe 20, based on the acoustic complexity. Elliot's hands began to shake. Too much sound, too much unpredictability. He quickened his pace toward the machinery shed, hoping to reach it before whatever was happening became his problem. He didn't make it. When he rounded the corner to Patterson's feed supply, he saw them. A wall of motorcycles parked in a loose semicircle around the machinery shed. Men and women in leather vests covered with patches stood in groups, talking in low voices. Their bikes gleamed under the street lights, chrome reflecting light in patterns that hurt Elliot's eyes. His shed, his safe place. They were blocking access to his shed. Elliot stopped walking 30 feet away. His hands went to his ears, pressing hard. The engines had shut off, but the absence of noise was almost worse than the presence of it. It meant these people were waiting for something. Possibly for him. A large man with a gray beard noticed him first. "Hey, kid, You live around here? Elliot couldn't respond. His throat had closed. The man was walking toward him now, and several others were following. Too many people. Too close. Moving in unpredictable patterns. We're looking for someone, the bearded man continued. His voice was gruff but not angry. Teenager, probably homeless, saved a little girl from a barn fire a few days back. You know anything about that? The question required a response, but Elliot's vocal cords wouldn't cooperate. His body had shifted into full shutdown mode, hands pressed against ears, rocking starting, eyes fixed on a point somewhere past the man's shoulder. He was still standing, still aware, but all communication pathways had closed. Chains, back up, a different voice, quieter. Look at him. Something's not right. The men stopped approaching. Elliot could see them through his peripheral vision, a wall of leather and denim, tattoos and beards. His brain tried to catalog them. 23 individuals, average height 5'10". Dominant clothing color black, threat level unknown. Is he hurt? Someone asked. No, it's something else. My nephew does that. When he gets overwhelmed. This voice was closer, gentler. Everyone back up. Give him space. The wall of people moved backward. Not far enough. Elliot's safe distance was approximately 15. From any human, but better. The rocking continued. He couldn't stop it even if he wanted to. Son? The gentle voice again. I'm going to come a little closer, but I'm going to move real slow. Is that okay? Elliot didn't answer, couldn't answer, but the man approached anyway, stopping about 10 feet away. This one was different from the others. Leaner build, maybe 40 years old, wearing the same leather vest but with different patches. His movements were deliberate, telegraphed. My name's Maddox, the man said, but my brothers call me Ironside. That little girl you saved, that was my daughter, Adelaide. Her granddad was watching her that evening, and she snuck out chasing fireflies. The information penetrated Elliot's shut-down state. Adelaide, the girl from the barn, daughter of this man. The equation began forming in his head. Girl saved equals people looking for rescuer equals 23 motorcycles outside shed. We've been looking for you, Ironside continued. His voice stayed quiet, steady. Wanted to say thank you. We wanted to do more than just say it. Elliot's hands slowly lowered from his ears. The rocking slowed but didn't stop. He still couldn't speak, but his eyes shifted to meet Ironside's face briefly before darting away again. Ironside noticed. You don't talk much, do you? No judgment in his voice, just observation. That's okay. I've got a cousin who's like that sometimes. Gets overloaded. He reached into his vest pocket slowly, pulling out a small spiral notebook and a pen. He held them up so Elliot could see them, then placed them carefully on the ground between them before backing up a step. If talking's hard right now, maybe you could write, just so we know we've got the right person. Elliot stared at the notebook for 17 seconds. Writing was easier than speaking. Writing followed rules. He stepped forward carefully, picked up the notebook and wrote in his precise architectural lettering. I calculated the structural failure would occur at 4.3 minutes. Actual failure at 4.1 minutes. Margins of error need adjustment. He held the notebook up. Ironside read it, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe recognition. You went into a burning barn because you calculated you had 4.3 minutes? Ironside said slowly. That's how your mind works? Elliot nodded once. A small movement, barely perceptible. And you saved my daughter. Ironside's voice had changed, gotten thicker. She's alive because you did math in your head and ran into a fire. Another nod. Ironside turned back to the group of bikers. It's him. This is the kid. Then louder. Everyone stay where you are. Don't crowd him. The group shifted but held position. Elliot could see curiosity in their faces, confusion, questions they weren't asking. His heart rate was still elevated, 127 beats per minute, approximately. But the immediate panic had subsided. These people weren't attacking. They were waiting. Waiting for him. I'm going to ask you some questions, Ironside said. You can write the answers or nod or shake your head, whatever works. That okay? Elliot considered this, then wrote, acceptable. Do you live in that shed? Nod. Do you have family around here? Head shake. Are you getting regular meals? Head shake. Ironside was quiet for a long moment. "How old are you, son?" Elliot wrote. 16. 16. Ironside repeated it like the number hurt. "And you're out here alone," Elliot wrote again, faster now. "Grandmother died 9 months ago. Foster care wanted to institutionalize me. I left. This shed has good structural integrity and predictable patterns. It's sufficient." Ironside read the words, his jaw tightening. Behind him, other bikers were shifting, murmuring to each other. Elliot caught fragments. "Just a kid, living in a goddamn shed. Saved Adelaide." "Well," Ironside said finally, "that's not sufficient. Not anymore." He held up his hands when Elliot's body tensed. Hold on. I'm not talking about forcing you anywhere. But my brothers and I, we take care of our own. And anyone who saves one of our children, that makes you our own, whether you like it or not." Elliot wrote, "I don't understand what that means. It means we're going to help you. But..." Ironside paused, choosing words carefully. "We're going to do it your way. No surprises, no forcing. You tell us what you need, and we'll figure it out together." The concept was foreign. People didn't ask Elliot what he needed. They told him what was wrong with him, what he needed to change, how he should act. His parents had stopped asking questions years ago, just made appointments with doctors who wanted to medicate him into compliance. "Why?" Elliot wrote. "Because you ran into a burning building to save my little girl," Ironside said simply. "Because you're 16 and living in a shed and that's not right. And because..." He gestured to the group behind him. "We're good at a lot of things, but mostly we're good at protecting people who need protecting." Elliot looked at the assembled bikers. 23 people, all watching him. Not with pity, he realized, with something else. Something that looked like respect. He wrote, "Your arrival disrupted my evening routine. I need to complete my route." Ironside actually smiled. "Your route. Okay. You want us to clear out so you can do that?" Elliot nodded. "Then we'll clear out." Ironside pulled a card from his pocket. Actual paper card, not digital, and placed it on the ground near the notebook. "That's got my number. Tomorrow, same time, I'm coming back. Just me, no bikes, no crowd. We'll talk more. That work for you?" Elliot picked up the card. It was simple. Maddox, Tanner, and a phone number. He wrote, 7:30 p.m. "Here. Only you. Only me," Ironside confirmed. "You got my word." Within 3 minutes, the motorcycles were leaving. They started in sequence, not all at once. Someone had told them to minimize the noise. Elliot watched from his position 30 feet away as they rumbled off into the evening, leaving him standing alone with a notebook full of unfamiliar words and a business card he didn't know what to do with. He completed his route 46 minutes late. Then he sat in his shed, staring at the card, trying to calculate whether he'd made an error in allowing these strangers into his pattern. The next evening at 7:30 p.m. exactly, Ironside returned, alone as promised. No motorcycle, he'd come in an older truck that made less noise. He parked 30 feet away and waited until Elliot approached him. "Thank you for coming back," Ironside said. He held up the same notebook from yesterday. "I brought this. Figured you might want it." Elliot took it and wrote, "You were punctual. That's good. I figure if we're going to do this, we do it right." Ironside leaned against his truck, not approaching closer. "I talked to my sister last night. She's a therapist, works with kids. She explained some things to me about how your brain might work different than mine." Elliot's hand tightened on the pen. Different. That word usually preceded bad things. "Not bad, different," Ironside said quickly, as if reading his mind. "Just different. Like how my daughter sees colors brighter than I do, or how my brother Chains can hear engine problems I can't. Your brain does stuff mine can't." He paused. "Like calculates structural failure under fire conditions while most people would just panic." Elliot wrote, "Most people don't want me to be different. They want me to be normal." "Yeah, well," Ironside shrugged. "I ride with guys who society says aren't normal either. We don't put much stock in what most people want." Over the next hour, Ironside asked questions. Not the usual questions about why Elliot couldn't make eye contact, or why he rocked, or why he didn't speak more. Questions about his routines, his shed, what made him feel safe. Questions about what scared him, what he needed, what he wanted. Elliot answered in writing, each response careful and precise. It felt strange to have someone care about his patterns instead of trying to break them. "Here's what I'm thinking," Ironside said finally. "I talk to people, figure out what kind of help you'd actually want. Not what we think you need, what you want. But that means you've got to tell me. Can you do that?" Elliot wrote, "Why do you care? You don't know me. You saved my daughter's life." Ironside's voice went quiet. "I lost my old man when I was young. Grew up rough. Adelaide's the best thing I ever did, and I almost lost her because she was chasing fireflies and I wasn't watching close enough." He met Elliot's eyes briefly. "You gave me a second chance to be her father. That's a debt I can't repay, but I'm sure as hell going to try." Elliot considered this. Debt implied obligation, which implied predictable behavior. "That was acceptable," he wrote. "I need my routines to stay the same. I need quiet spaces. I need time to adjust to changes. I need people to say what they mean without hidden meanings." "Done," Ironside said immediately. "What else?" "I like buildings. How they work, how they're built. I want to study architectural engineering. Then we'll figure out how to make that happen." Elliot looked up sharply. People didn't say things like that to him. People said he needed to focus on life skills, on learning to function in society, on managing his disability. Nobody talked about engineering school. "I mean it," Ironside said. "You've got a gift, kid, a real gift. Be ashamed to waste it." For the next several weeks, Ironside came back every evening at 7:30 p.m. Sometimes he brought Adelaide, who would sit quietly 10 feet away and draw pictures while Ironside and Elliot communicated through the notebook. She never tried to hug him again, but she'd hold up her drawings for him to see. Slowly, carefully, Ironside was learning Elliot's language. He discovered that Elliot only ate 7 specific foods, and that changing his diet required weeks of preparation. He learned that certain sounds, motorcycle engines, unexpectedly, were actually calming to Elliot once they became predictable, because they followed mechanical patterns. He learned that Elliot could talk, but that speaking required enormous energy and usually only happened when he felt safe. "My sister says you might have something called autism," Ironside said one evening, 3 weeks in. "You ever hear that word?" Elliot wrote, "Parents wanted me tested. Then they wanted me in a group home. I left." "Yeah, my sister explained that too. Said a lot of people don't understand it, think it's something that needs fixing." Ironside shook his head. "But she also said that with the right support, people like you can do amazing things. Already seen you do amazing things." Elliot wrote, "I don't want to be fixed. Good. Because we're not trying to fix you. We're trying to help you build the life you want." During the 4th week, Ironside brought 3 other members of the club, Tracker, Granite, and a woman named Whisper. He'd explained ahead of time who would be there and what they looked like. No surprises. "Tracker works construction," Ironside explained. "Whisper's brother is on the autism spectrum. She gets it. And Granite has a good head for numbers. Figured they might have insights." They sat in a loose circle, maintaining Elliot's safe distance, and talked about practical things. Housing options that would meet Elliot's need for structure. Job possibilities that would accommodate his communication style. Educational paths that would let him pursue engineering. "We've got a member who owns an architecture firm," Tracker said. "Small outfit, does custom residential. He might be willing to take you on as a draftsman, teach you the trade," Elliot wrote rapidly. "I have no credentials, no high school diploma. Why would he hire me?" "Because I'd vouch for you," Ironside said. "And because he owes me a favor. But mainly because you're good. I've seen your drawings in that notebook. You've got the eye." The conversation continued for 2 hours. By the end, Elliot had a notebook full of possibilities, each one explained in concrete terms with no ambiguity. They weren't making promises, Ironside emphasized. They were making plans. Plans could be adjusted if they didn't work. "One more thing," Ironside said as they were preparing to leave. "Adelaide's been asking if you'd come to dinner. Nothing fancy, just my place. She wants to say thank you proper." Elliot's hands began to shake. New place, new people, new everything. "Think about it," Ironside said quickly. "No pressure. And if you come, we'll make it work for you. tell you exactly what to expect, when to arrive, when you can leave. Your choice. 2 days later, Elliot wrote, acceptable. I need the address 3 days in advance. I need to visit the location beforehand. I need to know what food will be served. Done, done, and done, Ironside said, grinning. The dinner happened 1 week later. Elliot had visited the house twice before, mapping out the rooms, identifying the quietest space, a corner of the dining room with no window glare. Ironside's wife had been briefed on Elliot's needs and prepared one of his safe foods without comment. Adelaide was nervous, which Elliot understood. She kept glancing at him and then looking away. Finally, she slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a drawing, a barn on fire, a stick figure leading a smaller stick figure out, stars above them. I drew you, she said quietly. The stars are because you're my hero. Elliot studied the drawing for a long moment, then wrote in his notebook. The proportions on the barn are incorrect. The door should be 1.5 times the height of the human figures for accurate scale. Adelaide's face fell. Ironside looked like he was about to intervene, but then Elliot continued writing. But the concept is good. Thank you for making this. Adelaide's smile came back slowly. You're welcome. It wasn't a long dinner, 90 minutes, exactly as scheduled, but Elliot managed it. When he left, Ironside walked him to the door. You did good, kid, he said. I know that was hard, Elliot wrote. It was tolerable. Your daughter is adequately pleasant. Ironside laughed, a real belly laugh. High praise from you, I'm guessing. Yes, Elliot wrote. Then, after a pause, will you come tomorrow? Same time? Wouldn't miss it. 6 weeks after the first conversation, the plan was ready. Ironside's club had worked with a local autism advocacy organization, the one his sister knew, to set up structured support. They'd found a small studio apartment, and critically, they'd let Elliot tour it 6 times before asking if he'd accept it. The apartment was on the ground floor, with concrete walls, excellent sound insulation, and a layout Elliot had sketched in his notebook until he knew every measurement. The furniture was minimal and arranged exactly as Elliot had specified. The kitchen had only his safe foods. The bathroom had the same soap and shampoo he used. Everything had been chosen to minimize change while providing stability. It's yours if you want it, Ironside said during the final walkthrough. Rent's covered for the first year. Don't argue, we worked it out. After that, we'll see how the job situation is going. Elliot wrote, this is acceptable, more than acceptable. The job was equally carefully arranged. The architecture firm owner, a man named Roger Poulsen, had met with Elliot 3 times before officially offering him a position. He'd explained exactly what the work would entail, what the hours would be, what the office environment was like. He'd agreed to let Elliot work in a quiet corner, to provide written instructions instead of verbal ones when possible, to allow for headphones during particularly complex drafting work. You'd be starting as basically an apprentice, Poulsen had explained, learning the trade while you work on your GED. If you're as good as Ironside says, there's a path here, a real career. Elliot had written, I want to design buildings that don't fall down. Then you're in the right place, Poulsen had replied. The transition happened over 2 weeks, each day following a schedule Elliot had reviewed and approved, moving belongings from the machinery shed to the apartment. Starting work on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings only for the first month, maintaining his evening walks, but now ending at a different location. It was terrifying and exhausting and occasionally overwhelming. Elliot had 3 complete shutdowns during the first week, each time retreating to his apartment and rocking in the corner until his nervous system recalibrated. But each time, he came back. Because the patterns were good patterns. Because the people were keeping their promises. Because for the first time since his grandmother died, someone was speaking his language instead of demanding he learn theirs. The club members checked in regularly, always at scheduled times. Ironside came every evening for the first month, then 3 times a week, then weekly. Adelaide sent drawings. Whisper shared resources about autism and self-advocacy. Tracker brought blueprints from construction sites for Elliot to study. They weren't fixing him. They were building supports around him so he could be himself while thriving. 3 months into the new arrangement, Elliot was speaking more. Not constantly. Speaking still required energy, but in his apartment, with people he trusted, words came more easily. His work at the firm was exceptional. Poulsen had started giving him increasingly complex projects. You see things other people miss, Poulsen told him. Load distribution, structural weaknesses, efficient use of space. You've got an intuitive understanding of how buildings want to work. Elliot didn't think it was intuitive. He calculated everything, but he accepted the compliment with a nod. During month 4, Ironside arrived with unexpected news. So the club's been talking, he said, settling into his usual chair in Elliot's apartment. We want to do something, but I need you to be okay with it first. Elliot looked up from his drafting table, waiting. We want to set up a scholarship fund. For people like you, kids who think different, who need support to get education in technical fields, engineering, architecture, programming, whatever. Ironside leaned forward. Adelaide's idea, actually. She said if you could save her, maybe you could save other kids too, by showing them there's a path. Elliot considered this. You want to use me as an example? Only if you're comfortable with it. And you'd be involved, helping set criteria, reviewing applications. Your brain, kid. It works different, but it works really well. Other kids should get the same shot you're getting. What would be required of me? Honestly, just keep doing what you're doing. Succeed. Be proof that it works. Ironside smiled. Think you can handle that? Elliot wrote in his ever-present notebook. Acceptable. The scholarship fund launched during month 6, with a website and application process that Elliot had reviewed for clarity. The club promoted it through their networks. The local autism advocacy organization spread the word. Applications started coming in. Elliot reviewed them at his drafting table, reading about teenagers who couldn't make eye contact, who needed rigid routines, who saw the world in patterns and systems. Kids whose parents didn't understand them. Kids who'd been told they couldn't handle college, couldn't hold jobs, couldn't contribute. He knew their stories because he'd lived them. We've got 12 strong candidates for the first year, Whisper reported during a review meeting. 2 interested in engineering, 3 in computer science, 1 in mathematics. All of them need support but have real potential. Elliot looked at the applications spread across his table. Fund all of them, he said quietly. Elliot. The budget. Fund all of them, he repeated. I'll work extra hours, contribute my pay, whatever it takes. Ironside and Whisper exchanged glances. Kid, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Elliot's voice was firmer now. Someone helped me. I helped them. That's how it works. The club agreed. They'd find the money. By month 7, something unexpected had happened. The club itself had changed. Not dramatically, but in small, meaningful ways. They'd learned about neurodiversity, about different communication styles, about the importance of structure and clarity. We had this prospect come through last month, Tracker mentioned during one of his visits. Kid was interested in joining but had some processing issues, needed extra time to understand things. 2 years ago, we might have passed on him. But because of you, because of what we learned, we worked with him. He's patched now. Good brother. We're thinking about doing training, Whisper added, for all members, about different ways people think and communicate. Make the club more accessible. Elliot looked up. Because of me? Because you taught us something important, Ironside said. That help isn't one size fits all. That if we're serious about protecting people, we need to understand them first. The realization settled slowly. He hadn't just been saved, he'd changed them too. 6 months after the barn fire, Elliot stood in the clubhouse conference room, a rolled set of blueprints in his hands. Ironside had asked him if he'd be willing to design an expansion, a new meeting space that would better serve the club's needs. Elliot had said yes. The room was full of members, maybe 30 people, all watching as he unrolled the drawings on the large table. His hands shook slightly, but he managed. The current structure has insufficient load-bearing capacity in the northern wall, he said, pointing to his carefully drafted plans. His voice was quiet but steady. This design redistributes the weight across 3 reinforced columns, increasing capacity by 40% while maintaining the existing aesthetic. He continued through the blueprints, explaining structural decisions, material choices, cost-efficiency measures. The room was silent, everyone leaning in to see his work. When he finished, there was a moment of quiet. Then Tracker whistled low. "Kid, this is professional-grade work." "It's better than professional," Poulsen added from the back of the room. He'd been invited to review the plans. "This is exceptional, the kind of thinking that wins awards." Elliot carefully rolled up the blueprints. "Are the plans acceptable?" "Acceptable?" Ironside laughed. "They're perfect, detailed as hell, brilliant solutions to problems I didn't even know we had." He stood up, but maintained his distance. "You did good, Elliot. Real good." Adelaide was there too, sitting next to her father. She'd grown comfortable with Elliot's presence over the months, learning his boundaries. Now she held up a new drawing, this one showing the expanded clubhouse with tiny stick figures. "I drew your building," she said. Elliot studied it. "The scale is still incorrect, but you've improved the perspective." He paused. "Thank you," she beamed. As the meeting wound down, members came by to look at the blueprints more closely, to ask questions about his design choices. Elliot answered each one, his voice growing more confident as he discussed structural engineering, his area of expertise, his special interest, the thing his brain was built to understand. Later, after most members had left, Elliot sat in the quiet corner of the clubhouse. Adelaide was coloring at a nearby table, close enough for companionship but far enough to respect his space. This proximity, this parallel presence, was as close to friendship as Elliot could manage, and somehow it was enough. Ironside approached slowly, telegraphing his movement. "Can I sit?" Elliot nodded. "I've been thinking about something," Ironside said, settling into a chair 6 feet away. Exactly Elliot's preferred conversational distance. "That night at the barn you calculated the risks. Figured out you had a 23% chance of dying if you went in." 23%, Elliot confirmed. "Acceptable risk given the alternative. You saved my daughter, gave me my whole world back." Ironside's voice was thick with emotion. "And I thought we'd repay that by helping you get an apartment, a job. But that's not what happened, is it?" Elliot looked at him, confused. "We learned from you," Ironside continued. "The whole club, we're better at helping people now. Better at understanding different needs, different ways of thinking. You changed us, Elliot. Made us more than we were." Elliot processed this slowly. "I don't understand how I changed you. I'm just using my mind the way it works." "Exactly," Ironside smiled. "You showed us that different isn't less, that your way of seeing the world, all those calculations and patterns and structures, that's not a problem to fix. It's a gift to respect. It's just how I think." "I know, and we just learned how to be the family you needed." Ironside stood up carefully. "You saved my daughter that night, but I think maybe you saved some of the rest of us too." Elliot considered this as Ironside walked away. Family. The word felt foreign but not unpleasant. His parents hadn't been family. They'd wanted to change him, institutionalize him, make him into someone he couldn't be. His grandmother had been family, but she was gone. But these people, this strange collection of bikers who'd shown up because he'd solved an equation and run into a fire, maybe they were family too. A different kind of family. One built on mutual understanding rather than blood. Adelaide brought over her drawing, placing it carefully on the table next to his blueprints. "Do you like it?" Elliot studied the colorful depiction of the clubhouse. "The proportions remain incorrect. Buildings don't have faces." "This building does," Adelaide said seriously. "It's happy because you made it better. Buildings don't have emotions. They're structures composed of materials following physical laws." "Okay." Adelaide went back to her coloring, unbothered by his literal interpretation. She'd learned over the months that this was how Elliot communicated, and it didn't mean he was being mean. It just meant he was being himself. Elliot picked up his pen and added a note to Adelaide's drawing. "But the concept demonstrates creative thinking. That has value." She looked at his careful handwriting and smiled. That evening, Elliot walked back to his apartment. His route had changed since moving, but he'd established a new one, with new patterns and new numbered steps. The apartment building came into view at step 892, exactly as it should. Inside, the space was quiet and organized. His drafting table held new projects from the firm. The walls displayed several of Adelaide's drawings, carefully framed. The kitchen contained his 7 safe foods, arranged in precise order. But there was something new on the small desk near the window. Applications for the scholarship fund, waiting for his review. 12 teenagers who needed what he'd been given. Not a cure, not fixing, but support and understanding, and a chance to use their different minds to build different futures. Elliot sat down and opened the first application. A 17-year-old who designed a water filtration system in his notebook but couldn't pass his high school English class because he couldn't write the way they wanted. A genius in his own way, invisible to a system that only recognized one kind of intelligence. Elliot wrote in his notebook, "Recommend full scholarship. His mind works in systems and solutions. That has value." Then he moved to the next application. The work continued past midnight. Elliot didn't notice the time. When he was focused on a problem, temporal awareness became secondary to the calculations at hand. Each application was a puzzle to solve, a life to understand, a pattern to recognize. These kids weren't broken. They were different. And difference, Elliot had learned, wasn't the same as wrong. When he finally set down his pen, the first hints of dawn were touching the horizon outside his window. Elliot watched the light change, calculating the angle of the sun, the rate of illumination, the precise moment day would overtake night. The world was full of patterns, and he understood them. That understanding had saved Adelaide, had changed the club, was about to change the lives of 12 more teenagers who thought the world had no place for them. His grandmother used to say his mind was beautiful. His parents had said it was broken. The truth, Elliot now understood, was simpler. His mind was just his mind. Different architecture, different load-bearing structures, different materials, but no less capable of creating something meaningful. Elliot opened his notebook to a fresh page and wrote, "Acceptable outcome. Thank you." The words were meant for all of them, for Ironside, who'd learned his language, for Adelaide, who'd accepted his boundaries, for the club members who'd adapted themselves instead of demanding he adapt, for his grandmother who'd always believed his different mind had value. Most of all, the words were meant for himself. Because for the first time since she died, Elliot believed it too. Outside, the sun continued its calculated rise. Inside, Elliot returned to his drafting table and began sketching a new building, one with perfect proportions, sound structural integrity, and space enough for all kinds of minds to thrive. The design, like his life, was still being drawn. But the foundation was solid, the measurements were precise, and the calculations promised something stable and strong. That, Elliot thought, was acceptable, more than acceptable. It was home. If you have enjoyed this story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.